The NBA season is slowly wrapping up, and as we come to an ending of the regular season and the start of the play-in and the playoffs, I thought I'd sit back down in front of the camera and just talk about what's happening. It's been a long time since I made a video, been very lacking, very unmotivated to make anything for a lot of reasons. I've been pretty busy, just school, and not really seeing too much in the NBA that I've been captivated by. The NBA has been a little lacking, especially when you get to that middle part of the season and it kind of starts to drag on. Every game feels the same. And when my team, the Chicago Bulls, are as bad as they are, it's hard to watch it as intently as I did earlier in the season when there were still a lot of questions to be answered. But I'm not going to drag this intro on for too long. Today, we're going to be talking about the Eastern Conference and how tight it has gotten. The West is getting very tight as well, and I will make a video about them. But this video is dedicated to the Eastern Conference, and first off, I want to go down on the standings and talk about the teams and the implications that these last couple games are going to have for them. So, to start off, the top three teams, the Sixers, the Nets, and the Bucks, all very close. The Sixers and the Nets have about the same record. The Nets are only a half game behind the Sixers. And it's going to be close, and it's going to be important what happens here because home court advantage is going to be very important for any team, especially with the less restrictions. There have been less COVID restrictions the past couple of weeks than there have been the entire season. Vaccines are finally getting distributed. It's looking good for the sport of basketball, and teams are able to fill those arenas a little bit more than they were. Chicago is finally allowing fans into their arena. The amount of people in the stands is increasing. COVID vaccines they're a lot more plentiful than they were before. So, with that said, the fans aren't the only reason. Traveling, players don't want to travel somewhere to play a game. You want to stay at your house and you want to play your game in your city. That's how it works. That's why home court advantage is so important. That is why I think that this is going to be an important race here, and with Harden out for what Steve Nash has said a ways away, I think the Sixers might end up keeping this spot. Do I think that, it's going to be Sixers-Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals? I think it could be, but I think the Bucks have a good chance of stopping that momentum for either of these teams. The Bucks can face a real challenge for the Nets. They've got Giannis, and Kevin Durant's going to have to do his best to guard Giannis because the Nets don't really have anybody else that can. Plus, they have an inexperienced head coach in Steve Nash. Do I think Steve Nash is a bad coach? Not necessarily, but in the playoffs, that's where coaching becomes more of... That is where coaching is most important because it is in these small moments where coaching really matters and you can game plan for specific things where your team might not necessarily be better than the team you're playing. But if you have a better coached team playing a worse coached team, as long as things work out playing-wise and, your guys are making their shots, that's going to be a big advantage for whoever has the best and most well-coached team. So, I think that a team like the Sixers with Doc Rivers are well set in that department because he is an experienced coach. He knows what to do in these situations. Steve Nash is not an experienced coach, and that could come back to bite the Nets for hiring him because they only have a few years with Harden, Kyrie, and KD. I don't think this is going to last as long as many would. The contracts are going to be a lot. They're already locker room things happening. We don't know everything that happens behind the scenes. But I am a little curious to see what happens for the future of this team with three of top 10 players in the NBA. So, with that said, that is what I'm thinking about the, top teams in the Eastern Conference. It's hard to say this, but the Knicks are a top team in the Eastern Conference as well, and I think that, as I said about a well-coached team, they're going to pose a serious threat for anybody they play. Defensively, they are very tough. Tom Thibodeau, as always, has led this unit into a real tough unit that is not easy to just get buckets on. They're one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. It all comes down to Julius Randle. Julius Randle gets buckets. He is crazy good. He was playing the Bulls the other night, and it almost felt like every time he pulled up, it was going in. His confidence is at an all-time high. He's playing at an NBA all-star level, and I mean, dude, he has been just so good this season. MVP, he could be in that top 5 finish for MVP the way he's been playing. He has not missed many games, and he's led his team to the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference behind 3 of the best teams in the NBA. He has been incredibly good this season. He's a lock for most improved player. He should win it unanimously. If anybody contests that, they have not watched him play basketball this year. He's completely changed the narrative on his name, and he is now an NBA All-Star. Can't give more props to him. R.J. Barrett has been shooting fantastic from 3. That's a big part. They are missing Mitchell Robinson, and Nerlens Noel has been hurt, so the center position is a little bit of a question for them. But they have a lot of good role players that play gritty defense, and Tom Thibodeau is going to continue to allow this team to succeed defensively. It's offensively where the questions come up. Can Julius Randle carry a playoff team? Maybe. Derrick Rose could step in, and if he plays like, Derrick Rose of the past could, they have a real shot to knock off some big names. I could see it being a 7-game series. I don't think that they would win just because they play so hard on these teams and just so aggressively. They're going to be more vulnerable to getting more tired or not being able to hold up as long. Injuries do happen, and especially when you have guys like Derrick Rose, who has an injury history, and everybody else is a young guy, it could be a rough go for them. But they're a team that can get lucky, and as long as they stay away from any sort of freak accident injury, they are going to do very well in these playoffs. Next 3 teams, Hawks, Heat, and Celtics, they are all very close. The Heat are 35-30, so are the Hawks, so that's a close race to look at there for seeding perspectives. And then the Celtics are 34-31, so they're a game behind both the Hawks and the Heat. The Hawks have Trae, John Collins is playing great, Gallinari. Bogdan Bogdanovic has been playing like what his contract says he should be playing like. He's been playing very good basketball. I don't think this team is a playoff threat, though. As much as I like them, I do really like the Hawks. As a Bulls fan, it's kind of hard to say because they're an Eastern Conference team that rivals our ability to succeed in this conference. But they're good. They've got a good future ahead of them. Defensively, though, it's bad. They do not have very many good defenders. I mean, Chris Dunn, you can say, yeah, he's a great defender. He's not enough. Trae is one of the worst defenders in the league. They've got John Collins, not a good defender. Danilo Gallinari, not a great defender. Bogdan Bogdanovic, not a great defender. All of it is kind of snowballing into this. Are they going to be able to make noise with a lack of defense? And I don't think that they are going to be able to make as much noise as is needed. So I think that they could be a first-round exit. I would not be surprised, especially with the teams behind them. So the Heat and the Celtics are both great teams. We've seen that. The Heat made the finals last year. They aren't necessarily the team they were last year, but Jimmy Butler is a guy who can will you to wins. The Celtics are a very confusing team, but they are a team that can win a playoff series. They've got Jason Tatum, great player, as we saw. He just dropped 60 the other night. They've got Jaylen Brown, all-star player. They've got Kemba Walker, was an all-star player. He's going to be kind of an X factor for them. If he can make his shots, he's going to be very valuable to them. But if he can't, he doesn't bring much else. Defensively, he's not very good. He's kind of old. He doesn't give as much, He's not the Kemba Walker we saw in Charlotte. He's a different player. He's older. He's got serious knee issues. His contract's a big drag. I don't think he'll be there for much longer. But if he can make his shots in the playoffs and stay healthy, he's going to be really important for them because they need somebody else. You can't put it all on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown when you have no other role players getting you buckets. That is where the Evan Fournier trade comes into big play here. He can get you buckets. He's a great player. He's going to allow for a little bit less of an offensive load on JB and JT. So, Do I think that this team can beat the Bucks, the Nets, or the Sixers? As much as I love Tatum, I don't know. It's going to be tough. This team is really good. They've got Robert Williams at center. I think that's an overlooked part of this team. I think he's going to make a name for himself in these playoffs. I think that people are going to understand how good he is because sometimes people don't really get to see what impact Robert Williams has in a regular season game. But playoff-wise, his defense and his offense are going to be vital to the success of the Celtics. Because if he can't get it done, I don't think that this team's going to be able to do anything, especially against a guy like Giannis or KD or Joel. So, also, I don't really think Robert Williams is going to be able to guard Joel too well. You know, they might have to give Joel 30 and just hope they can outscore the Sixers, which is possible. But that is if they even end up playing the Sixers. So, now I'm going to do a quick rundown of the play-in teams. The Celtics are in the play-in because they're in that 7 seed. They could work their way up, but only time will tell. I think they'll probably stay where they are, especially with the recent injuries of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Then there's the Hornets, Pacers, Wizards, and Raptors. Raptors are on the edge, and personally, I don't think that they're going to make it into the play-in. So really all we have to talk about here is the Hornets, the Pacers, and the Wizards. Out of Celtics, Hornets, Pacers, Wizards, I think that the Wizards are going to take that 8 spot. I really do. They are fantastic. Russell Westbrook is playing amazing basketball. He is underrated at this point because he is not seen as a good player because of what happened last year in the playoffs. Well, that's just not the case. He's a great player. Plus, they've got Bradley Beal, one of the best scorers in the NBA. Rui Hachimura has been playing great. They've got great three-point shooting in Davis Bertans. They don't have a center except for Daniel Gafford, who, as a Bulls fan, pains me to see him leave. But it makes me very happy to see him succeed because he has a future in the league. 7-foot guy, big guy, super athletic. He is a rim protector. That's about it. He doesn't bring much defensive IQ or defensive versatility whatsoever. But rim protection is going to be big for a playoff series. Plus, he can get you buckets if you allow him to work the pick and roll. That is going to be vital. And with Russ, he can work the pick and roll with anybody. And Daniel Gafford, all he's got to do is walk to the rim. He's 7'1", 7'2", super athletic. I mean, I'll put up. This is one of my favorite dunks of all time when he played in college for Arkansas. This is a 7-footer who does an absolute snatch block on one end of the court, runs down the other, and does a windmill dunk. It's crazy. He's that good. So, for me, it's kind of looking like the Hornets and the Pacers are on the outs, especially with the Hornets missing Gordon Hayward. They don't really have. I mean, LaMelo's coming back, but I love LaMelo. I don't think he's at a Gordon Hayward level yet. He can definitely get there. But that's going to do it for now. Those are the teams I'm expecting to make the Eastern Conference playoffs, and only time will tell what happens in those matchups. I will make a video when we get to the final matchups and talk about what I think is going to happen and my playoff predictions. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.